The first time Adrian Cross truly looked at me was 10 seconds after I handed him my resignation. He didn't read it at first. He barely glanced at the white envelope I placed beside his coffee, as if it were another contract waiting for his signature. "Leave it with the others, Evan." His eyes stayed on the numbers glowing across his monitor. 3 years at his side, and I knew exactly what that tone meant. Handled, dismissed, next. "It isn't for your signature." His fingers stopped over the keyboard. "What is it?" "My resignation." Silence filled the office so quickly I could hear the ventilation above us. Then Adrian lifted his head. Gray eyes. Perfectly controlled expression. The same face he wore when deals collapsed, executives panicked, or someone told him a deadline was impossible. "No," I almost smiled. Of course that was his first answer. "My final day is Friday." "You're not resigning." "I already did." Something changed in his face then. Not hurt. Irritation. The kind he reserved for problems refusing to behave logically. "Did someone make you an offer?" "This isn't about another offer." "Then tell me what it's about." For years I had imagined hearing that question. I had imagined what I would say if Adrian Cross ever stopped long enough to ask what I wanted instead of what needed to be done. Now the answer felt strangely simple. "I don't think explaining it would change anything." His jaw tightened. "That isn't your decision to make." There it was. The reason I knew I had made the right choice. I set my tablet beside the envelope. "Your calendar is updated through Friday. Transition notes are in the shared drive. Anything requiring your approval is flagged." Even while leaving, I was making myself useful. The realization landed hard enough that I pulled my hand back. Adrian noticed. "Evan, I'll finish the week." I turned toward the door. "After that, you'll need someone else." He said my name again, sharper now. I kept walking. If I stopped, I knew exactly what would happen. He would ask practical questions. I would give practical answers. He would solve the inconvenience and miss the person inside it. Again. 5 minutes after I left his office, Adrian opened the one file I had never meant him to see. He was searching the archive for the transition notes, moving through folders he had never needed to open because I had always brought him whatever mattered. He found one marked only with my initials. No project code, no client name, nothing suggesting it belonged to him. He opened it anyway. The first page looked harmless. Schedules, reminders, shorthand built around his habits. Never put investors immediately after quarterly reviews. Leave 15 minutes after meetings with his father. He won't ask for lunch when he's angry. Order it anyway. Then the notes changed. There were no accusations. No secret confession. Just records I had never intended another person to see. Missed my own appointment. Cross meeting ran over. Covered presentation after no sleep. Didn't correct him when he thanked the wrong team. Easier that way. Then one entry stopped him. Calder interview for 30. Canceled when Brighton crisis moved up. Didn't reschedule. They filled the role. Probably for the best. Adrian knew Calder. Everyone in our industry did. 18 months earlier, they had been hiring for a strategy position 2 levels above mine. He had never known I applied. He had never known I canceled the final interview because his client crisis exploded at 4:15 and I stayed until nearly midnight rebuilding the numbers he presented the next morning. Beneath it was another line. Tuesday, 11:40 p.m. He asked if I could stay another hour. I said yes before he finished the question. I don't know why I keep hoping one day he'll notice that I always say yes. Adrian sat very still behind his desk. My resignation envelope remained beside his coffee, unopened. The unanswered emails on his screen suddenly meant nothing. He looked through the glass wall at my empty chair. He had passed it thousands of times. He knew which reports appeared there, which calls were routed through it, which crises disappeared before they reached him. But he had never asked what vanished from my life to make his run so smoothly. By the time I reached the elevator, my hands were shaking. I pressed the button once and forced myself not to press it again. I had spent 3 years making sure Adrian never had to wait. Problems disappeared. Meetings aligned. Commitments were remembered before he remembered making them. I had thought being indispensable was the safest way to matter to someone. Standing there with my resignation already delivered, I finally understood the flaw in that logic. Adrian had noticed everything I did. That wasn't the same as noticing me. Upstairs, he was staring at proof of the difference. And for the first time, the question was no longer whether Adrian Cross would finally notice what I had been giving him. It was what he would do after discovering how much of my life had quietly disappeared inside it. By 9 the next morning, Adrian Cross had discovered something I had spent 3 years making sure he never had to discover. How much of his life only worked because I was standing just outside his office. He called me at 8:07. I let it ring. At 8:09, he called again. I was already on the train, watching downtown disappear behind scratched glass, my company badge in my coat pocket instead of clipped to my shirt. At 8:12, a message appeared. Call me. No greeting. No explanation. Pure Adrian. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then put my phone away. I had promised to finish the week, but I had also promised myself I would stop treating every request from him like an emergency. That promise lasted 23 minutes. At 8:35, I walked back into the building because resignation did not erase responsibility, and some habits take longer to leave than jobs. The lobby security desk had 3 people waiting beside it. Marissa from reception looked relieved when she saw me. Thank God. Mr. Cross's car never came. It came. The driver says the schedule showed 9:30. My stomach dropped. I had changed those details in my private calendar, then copied the official version to the shared system every evening. Yesterday, I stopped doing that at 6. Adrian had insisted for years that his calendar belonged in the corporate system, not in some assistant's head. He had been right in principle. In practice, the system had never accounted for the 1,000 small adjustments that made his day survivable. He has Brighton at 9, I said. Marissa's eyes widened. It was 8:37. I called the driver, moved the conference line, and sent Adrian the revised sequence. His reply came instantly. You said everything was updated. My fingers hovered over the screen. They were. I deleted it. Instead, I typed, the shared system was updated through Friday. Personal adjustments I made around your preferences were never part of the official process. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. No reply. At 8:56, Adrian walked through the lobby himself, jacket open, phone in one hand, expression sharp enough to quiet every conversation around him. Relief crossed his face when he saw me. It vanished almost immediately. My office. He shut the door behind us. Why wasn't the schedule correct? It was correct. I nearly missed Brighton. Because yesterday I stopped making undocumented adjustments after hours. Such as, your driver leaves earlier on Mondays because Lexington backs up. You need 15 minutes alone after calls with your father. You skip lunch when you're angry, so I order before you can cancel. You don't like junior staff after investor meetings because you think they can tell when you're distracted. You hate questions in elevators. Adrian said nothing. None of that belongs in a job description. Then why were you doing it? The question hit harder because he sounded honestly confused. Because it made things easier. For me, yes. His expression shifted. Then document it. There it was again. Make it measurable. Make it transferable. I documented what the next person needs. I'm not talking about the next person. You should be. His jaw tightened. Friday is still my last day. We'll discuss that later. No, you'll discuss it. I already decided. I left before he could turn me back into a problem with a solution. At 9:26, Brighton called again. The client's procurement director had received an outdated appendix because the final packet normally came through me after Adrian's last-minute edits. The discrepancy was small, but Brighton had been waiting for an excuse to slow the deal. They postponed their internal approval for 48 hours and requested a formal review of the numbers. Nothing collapsed. No one screamed. But a closing Adrian had expected by noon was suddenly at risk because one invisible handoff had not happened. At 9:41, he messaged me. Did you send the old appendix? I answered, no. The system sent the version approved yesterday at 6. A minute later, I changed it at 7:10. I stared at that line. He had changed it after I stopped working. For 3 years, I would have seen the revision, rebuilt the packet, warned legal, notified Brighton, and made the problem disappear before Adrian knew one existed. I typed. Then the revised version was never distributed. His next message took longer. I see. That was all. By noon, the office had accumulated smaller frictions around the larger one. A meeting moved floors, and no one reminded him. His coffee arrived with sugar. He asked who approved a revised deck. I answered, you did. Last Thursday. He replied, I don't remember that. I typed, I do. That was the problem, wasn't it? I remembered everything because someone had to. His preferences. His promises. The commitments he made when exhausted. The things he said yes to and later treated as if they had appeared by magic. I had built my value around remembering what Adrian Cross could afford to forget. At 1, I passed his office and saw the private file closed beside his keyboard. He wasn't reading it. He was staring at my empty chair. 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated. This time the message was different. How long have you been doing all of this? I read it twice. He was finally asking about the work he had never seen. But after Brighton, the question had changed for me. If Adrian only noticed me because his day had become harder without me, was he finally seeing the person who had left, or just realizing how expensive that person had been to lose? Adrian's question stayed unanswered on my phone for almost an hour. How long have you been doing all of this? I could have given him a number. 3 years. 36 months. Hundreds of late nights, rescheduled lunches, corrected mistakes, quiet decisions made before they became problems. But I suspected the number was no longer what he wanted. At 1:15 he appeared beside my desk, holding 2 sheets of paper. Come with me. I looked up. Is this work-related? His expression tightened. Yesterday, I would have stood before he finished speaking. Today I waited. Yes, he said after a moment. And no, that was new. I followed him into the small conference room across from his office. He closed the door and placed the pages between us. One was from my private file. The other was a project summary from 8 months earlier. The Halston acquisition. Adrian tapped the first page. Didn't correct him when he thanked the wrong team. Easier that way. My stomach tightened. That file was private. I know. Knowing that now doesn't make opening it less private. His hand moved away from the page. You're right. I hadn't expected that. Adrian Cross did not surrender points easily. This time he simply stood there, then turned the project summary toward me. The Halston model. The executive summary says strategy built the risk framework. They presented it. Did you build it? I hesitated. Most of it. His face went still. Most. Initial structure, stress scenarios, debt exposure. Strategy cleaned it up and took it into the meeting. And I thanked them. Yes. In front of you. Yes. Adrian looked back at the line from my file. Why didn't you correct me? I almost gave him the old answer. Because it didn't matter. Because the deal closed. Because correcting him would have made the room uncomfortable. Instead, I remembered sitting 2 chairs behind the people receiving credit for work I had done at 2 in the morning, already checking Adrian's next appointment before the applause ended. Because you were happy with the outcome, I said. And when you were happy with the outcome, you didn't ask how it happened. You think I wouldn't have cared who did the work? I think you cared that the work was done. Silence stretched between us. I would have given you credit. If I'd asked for it. Yes. I nodded once. Exactly. He stared at me. I don't understand. And suddenly I did. Not everything, but something important. Adrian had always believed my silence meant I needed nothing. I had believed his failure to ask meant he didn't care. We had spent years operating perfectly inside that gap. You thought if I wanted something, I'd tell you. Of course. And if I didn't, you assumed I was fine. He frowned. What else was I supposed to assume? The question should have made me angry. Instead, it made everything cleaner. Adrian hadn't spent 3 years actively deciding I wasn't worth noticing. He had built a world where competence erased need. If I handled everything, nothing was wrong. If I never interrupted him, I didn't need his attention. If I never claimed credit, recognition must not matter. The better I became at disappearing, the more evidence I gave him that disappearing was what I wanted. You could have noticed, I said. His face changed. I noticed you. You noticed results. He started to answer, then stopped. His gaze dropped to the papers. What else? I felt myself close off. No, his head lifted. No, I'm not giving you an inventory of every time you missed something so you can build a complete report on me. That's not what I'm doing. Yesterday, you wanted my schedule documented. Today, you want my disappointment documented. You're still trying to solve me by collecting enough information. The words landed hard. Adrian took a slow breath. Then tell me what I'm supposed to do. Under the frustration was something I almost never heard from him. Uncertainty. I stood. I don't know. But maybe don't start by asking me to make it easy for you. I left him with the pages. At 3, an email appeared in my inbox. Subject, Halston. 2 lines. I reviewed the original files. You built more of that deal than I knew. A second line followed. I'm beginning to think I knew what you could do, but not what any of it meant to you. I read it twice. 3 days ago, I might have given almost anything to hear Adrian admit he had been wrong about me. Instead, I felt something more complicated. He was finally looking backward with the attention I had once wanted in the present. And if one ordinary meeting had meant something completely different to each of us, how many years had we spent standing beside each other inside two entirely different relationships? By Thursday morning, Adrian had stopped asking me what I had done for him. He had started trying to stop me from leaving. At 8:20, I found a black folder centered on my desk. Inside was a revised employment agreement. New title, higher salary, direct authority over two departments I had spent years quietly coordinating without the authority to make either one listen. A handwritten note sat on top in Adrian's precise block letters. This should have happened sooner. I closed the folder. 10 minutes later, he appeared beside my desk. You read it? Yes. And it's generous. He waited. That wasn't an answer. It was the answer I have. His expression hardened slightly. The position fixes most of what you raised. I didn't raise this. I tapped the folder. You found it. Because I should have found it before. Probably. Then let me correct it. 3 days earlier, that sentence might have broken me. Promotion, recognition, authority, his attention, everything I had once convinced myself I was too professional to want. Now it sat between us, and all I could see was another version of the same arrangement with better terms. Who would I report to? Me. Who decides my priorities? We would. And when something goes wrong at 10 at night? His mouth tightened. That's not a fair question. It's the only one that matters. Adrian pulled out the chair across from my desk and sat. He almost never sat there. Usually I stood in his office while he decided how much of my time belonged to the problem in front of him. You think I'm asking you to go back to what we had, aren't you? No. I'm offering you what you should have had. Those aren't necessarily different things. He looked at the folder. You wanted recognition. Yes. Authority. Sometimes. You wanted me to notice what you were doing. That one caught me. Yes. Then why does getting those things make you want to leave more? There was no accusation in the question. I could have told him he was too late. It would have been true, simple, and satisfying, but not complete, because I wanted them when I still believed they would fix something. Adrian leaned back. And now I think they would make me better at staying. His eyes narrowed. Isn't that the point? For you. I pushed the folder toward him. His hand stopped it before it reached the edge. What do you want, Evan? For years I had known how to answer that question when it was about work. Faster approval. More data. 20 minutes with legal. A revised forecast by 5. But he wasn't asking about work now. I want Friday to still be my last day. That's what you want from me. No, then what do you want? I don't know yet. Frustration surfaced. You're walking away without knowing what you're walking toward. Yes. That doesn't sound like you. Maybe that's part of the problem. The words silenced us both. Adrian released the folder. I can change the terms. I looked at him and finally understood the tragedy of what he was trying to do. Adrian was doing what he knew when something valuable was at risk. Identify the failure, improve the offer, remove the objection. You're still negotiating. Because you're still leaving. And you still think leaving is the problem. His gaze sharpened. Isn't it? I stood and placed the folder on the corner of his desk. No, leaving is the consequence. After that I finished the transition I had promised. Every password transferred. Every recurring meeting reassigned. Every note moved into the shared system removed one more reason for anyone to call me on Monday. Adrian noticed. At noon he asked who would handle Whitmore. Maya. She's never run one for me. Then Monday will be her first. He opened his mouth, then closed it. At 2 he asked whether I could stay through the end of the month. I said Friday. This time he nodded once. Near 5 he stopped at my desk again. No contract. No revised number. I thought this was about me failing to recognize what you contributed, he said. I thought that too. But if I give you recognition, authority, money, and you still leave. He let the silence finish the sentence. For once he didn't force an answer into it. Then maybe I still don't understand what I'm trying to fix. I looked at him. That was the first thing he had said all day that sounded less like a negotiation and more like a question. And as I packed the last of my transition notes, I realized Adrian's failed offer had exposed something neither of us could solve with a contract. If I had spent years wanting him to see my value, why did finally being valued feel nothing like being seen? Friday morning, Adrian did not ask me to stay. That was how I knew something had changed. My final day began at 7:42 with an empty desk drawer, a cardboard box under my chair, and a calendar that no longer belonged to me. By 10 most of my access had been transferred. Adrian passed my desk twice without stopping. 3 days earlier, his silence would have felt like punishment. Now it felt deliberate. At 11:15, he sent a message. Before you leave, I need 20 minutes. If you're willing. I stared at the last 3 words. Adrian Cross asking permission was strange enough that I read them twice. I answered, at noon. When I entered his office, the revised contract was gone. So was my resignation envelope. The only thing on his desk was the private file he had opened on Monday, closed now. He did not touch it. I went back through everything, he said. I looked at the file. Everything you weren't supposed to read? His expression tightened. No. Everything I was allowed to see. That stopped me. He turned his monitor slightly. Old calendars. Project logs. Meeting notes. Expense approvals. 3 years of work. I was looking for the moment I started getting this wrong. Did you find it? No. He leaned back with an exhaustion I had never associated with him. That's the problem. There wasn't one moment. No single project. No decision I can reverse. No conversation where I can point and say, that was where I failed you. He glanced at the closed file. I thought you resigned because I didn't recognize your work. Then I thought it was because I never gave you the authority that should have come with it. I thought that too. But yesterday I offered both, and you looked more certain about leaving. He wasn't accusing me. He was finally following the contradiction. So I looked at what actually changed when you were around me. Not the work. You. I became very still. You stopped taking lunch. Not all at once. Gradually. You stopped correcting me when meetings ran over. You stopped putting your own appointments on the shared calendar. You stopped asking whether I needed anything before you left because eventually you stopped leaving before I did. My throat tightened. Those are small things. That's what I told myself. He looked directly at me. They were small enough that I never had to ask what they were costing you. I wanted to look away. I didn't. Every time you handled something without asking for anything back, I treated it as proof the arrangement worked. There it was. Not a shocking secret. Something worse because it had been visible the whole time. You thought I was fine, I said. Because you were good at making sure I was fine. My eyes burned. I folded my arms. I chose those things. You didn't force me. I know. Then don't turn this into a story where I had no agency. I'm not. His answer came immediately. I think that's what I kept getting wrong. You had agency. You used it to make yourself smaller. The words hurt because they were true in a way I had not wanted them to be. Adrian did not soften them, and I benefited from it, so I never questioned it. For several seconds I heard only the clock by his bookcase. I had spent the week waiting for Adrian to understand what he had missed. I had imagined that if he finally saw the unpaid hours, lost credit, canceled interview, constant attention, the ache inside me would settle into something clean. Anger. Vindication. Instead, I felt exposed. Somewhere along the way, I had learned to disappear so efficiently that being unseen became part of how I stayed close to him. I kept thinking if I did enough, one day you'd notice without me asking. Adrian's face changed. And if you had to ask, then it wouldn't count. The answer embarrassed me as soon as I said it. So you kept giving me more chances to notice. I gave a humorless laugh. Apparently. And I kept taking what you gave as evidence that you wanted to keep giving it. Yes. No villain. No single betrayal. Just two people reinforcing the worst assumption in each other. Finally, Adrian said, your resignation isn't about punishing me. No, it isn't about making me recognize you. No. You're leaving because staying here keeps turning you into someone who waits for another person to decide he matters. My throat closed. I looked at the box outside my door. Yes. For the first time all week, the answer felt complete. Adrian lowered his gaze. Then I can't fix this by giving you more reasons to stay. Something inside me shifted. Not enough to take back the resignation. Enough to change the shape of the room. No. Then I need to stop treating your leaving like a problem I'm entitled to solve. At 5:12, I carried my box toward the elevator. Adrian stood outside his office, hands empty. No contract. No demand for another week. Evan. I stopped. May I call you after today? After 3 years of answering before he finished asking, I understood exactly what made the question different. He was leaving the answer with me. You can ask. Adrian gave a small nod. That's fair. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, the question pulling me forward was no longer whether Adrian finally understood why I had left. He did. The harder question was what he would do now that understanding me no longer gave him any right to keep me. Monday morning arrived without a single message from Adrian. I noticed because I checked. Twice before breakfast, once while pouring coffee, and again at 8:03, the exact time he used to send his first request of the day. Nothing. By 9, I was annoyed with myself for caring. By 10, I was relieved. For the first time in 3 years, my morning belonged entirely to me. No calendar to scan. No quiet calculation of whether Adrian had eaten, slept, remembered a call, forgotten a promise. Around 11, my phone lit up. Adrian Cross. I stared until the ringing stopped. He did not call again. A minute later, a message appeared. I said I would ask, "Would you be willing to have coffee with me sometime this week?" No urgency. No command. No assumption that my time was already his. My first instinct was to answer immediately. The old reflex. Make uncertainty disappear before it inconvenienced anyone. Instead, I put the phone face down and answered 40 minutes later. Wednesday. 4. Public place. His response came almost instantly. Yes. Thank you. On Wednesday, Adrian was already seated when I arrived at a quiet coffee shop 6 blocks from my apartment. No laptop. No private room. He stood when he saw me. Hi. The words sounded almost absurd coming from him. Hi. I sat. He waited. You're not going to order for me? I asked. A faint crease appeared between his brows. Then he understood. No, you know what I drink. I do. And you're still not ordering. You didn't ask me to. Something in my chest shifted. Small. Unwelcome. Real. I ordered for myself. For several minutes we talked about ordinary things. Maya had told him he scheduled meetings like he was at war with time. She's right, I said. Apparently. I smiled before I could stop myself. Adrian noticed, but he did not use the opening to push. When our coffee arrived, he wrapped both hands around the cup. I spoke to human resources. My shoulders tightened. About what? Your old role. He paused. They wanted to know whether I intended to replace it directly. I told them not to use it as the template. Why? Because the role depended on too many things that should never have depended on one person, especially things that were never part of the role. What does that mean? Clear hours. Defined responsibilities. Backup coverage. No private adjustments that only exist because one person notices everything. And no expectation that availability equals loyalty. I looked down at my coffee. That sounds expensive. It is. You hate inefficiency. I do. And you're doing it anyway. Yes. No performance. No request for praise. Why tell me? Adrian's expression changed slightly. I almost didn't. Part of me wanted you to know I understood. Then I realized if I changed something only so you would think better of me, I would still be making the change about getting something from you. I looked at him. So I'm telling you because what happened should change something whether you come back into my life or not. That landed somewhere I wasn't prepared for. It would have been easier if he had begged. I knew how to protect myself from pressure. I did not yet know how to protect myself from restraint. One policy change doesn't fix 3 years. I know. Then what are you doing? Trying to stop making my understanding your responsibility. There was no dramatic apology. Just a man who had spent his life solving problems with control choosing, for once, to make himself less powerful inside the problem. When we finished, Adrian walked with me to the corner. A black car waited half a block away. Old instinct made me check the time. You're going to be late. Probably. Adrian. He almost smiled. I'll survive. The light changed. I expected him to cross with me. He didn't. Can I see you again? Maybe. Something flickered across his face, but he nodded. Okay. No negotiation. No when. I crossed alone. Halfway down the next block, I looked back. Adrian was still where I had left him, phone in his pocket, making no move to follow. He had finally given up the easiest way to influence the outcome. And as I walked home, that should have made everything simpler. Instead, it left me with a question more dangerous than any offer he had made before. If Adrian could learn to want me without needing my usefulness, what happened to the part of me that had spent years believing usefulness was the only reason anyone would stay? For the next 2 days, Adrian did exactly what he had said he would do. He did not chase me. He sent one message Thursday afternoon asking whether I wanted dinner the following week, and when I answered that I wasn't ready, he replied, understood. No argument. No silence designed to punish me. Just space. It should have made me feel safe. Instead, it made me restless. I had spent so long preparing to defend against pressure that I had no idea what to do when the pressure disappeared. Friday evening, I opened my laptop to update my resume and stared at the page. Managed executive operations. Coordinated acquisitions. Developed cross-functional systems. Every line sounded impressive. Every line also sounded like a list of ways I had made Adrian's life easier. I closed the laptop. A forgotten calendar reminder flashed on my phone. Cross quarterly review prep. My body reacted before my mind did. I checked the time. Thought about whether he had the latest numbers. Whether Maya knew he hated back-to-back reviews. Then I caught myself. None of it was mine anymore. That should have been freeing. Instead, it frightened me. If I wasn't the person who remembered everything, anticipated everything, fixed everything, who exactly was I in relation to Adrian? The answer came too quickly. No one, maybe. That was the part one had not admitted. Usefulness had hurt me, but it had also been the bridge between us. It was how I stayed close. How I made myself necessary. How I avoided asking whether Adrian would ever choose my company if I had nothing to solve. By Saturday afternoon, that question had become impossible to ignore. I texted him, "Are you free for a walk?" His reply came a minute later. "Yes." "Where?" We met by the river an hour later. Adrian arrived alone, nothing in his hands. He smiled when he saw me. Small. Uncertain. Hi. Hi. We walked without much conversation at first. The city moved around us. Cyclists, dogs, people carrying takeout, couples arguing softly about directions. Ordinary life made the silence between us feel less dangerous. "How was your week?" Adrian asked. "You really want to know?" "Yes. Even if none of it involves you." He stopped. "Especially then." My chest tightened. I updated my resume. "How did that go?" "Badly." "Why?" "Because everything I've done for 3 years sounds like a version of your life. And I realized I don't know what I want next." "That scares you." "Yes." "Because you like plans." "Because plans make me useful." Adrian looked down. "And usefulness makes you feel safe. Don't analyze me." "I'm not trying to. I'm trying to listen." We reached the railing. The river below was dark and slow. "Do you know the worst part?" I asked. "No, you're doing everything right." Adrian glanced at me. "That sounds like a strange complaint. If you were still controlling everything, this would be easy. I'd know why I couldn't trust you." His expression went quiet. "And now? Now I don't know if I can trust myself." I kept my eyes on the water. "I left because I didn't want my value tied to what I could do for you. But if you stop needing me..." The sentence lodged in my throat. "Part of me is terrified you'll stop wanting me to." Adrian did not answer immediately. The silence hurt, but I stayed inside it. Finally he said, "I don't know how to prove something like that without making it about proving it." I turned toward him. "That may be the most honest thing you've said all week." "Probably. You could tell me you want me." "I do." The words were simple. "But saying it doesn't prove anything. And I don't want you to choose me because I found the right sentence." "Then what do you want?" "I want you to decide what you want when you're not responsible for keeping me comfortable." The answer removed the last place I could hide. Adrian was no longer holding me with work, money, access, or obligation. He was standing beside me with nothing but an answer I was free to reject. That freedom had a cost I hadn't expected. If I walked away now, I could no longer tell myself I was escaping him. I would be choosing a life without him. If I stayed, I could no longer hide behind being indispensable. I would have to let him want me for reasons I couldn't control. "I can't keep doing this halfway," I said. Adrian held my gaze. "I know. I need to decide." He nodded once. "Then decide." No rescue from the uncertainty. Just the choice I had spent years avoiding. And for the first time since I resigned, I understood that walking away and moving forward were no longer the same thing. I made the decision the next morning. Not because I suddenly stopped being afraid, and not because Adrian finally said the perfect thing. The fear was still there when I woke up. It followed me into the kitchen and sat beside me while I stared at his name on my phone. But I understood now that waiting until I felt completely safe would only be another way of letting fear choose for me. I called him. He answered on the second ring. "Evan, are you free tonight?" A pause. "Yes. Come to my place at 7. "Okay." He did not ask why. At 7 exactly, Adrian stood outside my apartment door. No driver downstairs. No folder in his hand. No offer prepared. Just Adrian. I let him in. He looked around carefully, as though entering my home required a different kind of attention than entering one of his conference rooms. "Coffee?" I asked. "Only if you're having some." I almost smiled. We sat across from each other at my small kitchen table. For a minute, neither of us spoke. In his office, silence had always belonged to him. He decided when meetings began, when they ended, when a pause had lasted long enough. Here the silence was mine too. Adrian waited. I wrapped both hands around my mug. I know what I don't want. Okay. I don't want my job back. Not the old one. Not the new one. Not an improved version where you promise better hours and I pretend that makes everything different. Understood. I don't want to be the person you call because no one else knows how to organize your life. His jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. Okay. And I don't want to become necessary to you again just so I can feel safe. That one hurt to say. I don't want that either, he said. You say that now. What happens when something goes wrong? When work gets difficult? When you're tired and I'm right there? I don't know. I blinked. I had expected reassurance. He gave me honesty. I know what I want to do. I know what I've changed. But I can't promise I'll never fall into an old habit. That's not comforting. No. He leaned forward slightly, then stopped himself. But I can promise I won't make you responsible for stopping me. I looked at him for a long time. That's what I'm afraid of, I admitted. Not that you'll order me around again. I know how to fight that now. Then what? That I'll volunteer. His expression changed. You didn't have to ask half the time. I saw what you needed and gave it before you could. And every time you accepted it, I told myself it meant I mattered. If we do this, I need to know I can say no without wondering whether you'll want me less. Adrian's answer came quietly. Then say no. What? Not later. Now. He held my gaze. Say no to me. I almost laughed from nerves. To what? To whatever you think I want from you right now. I knew exactly what he meant. We had spent a week circling something neither of us had been willing to name directly. The old version of me would have searched his face, figured out what answer would keep him close, then given it. I felt that instinct rise. I let it pass. No, I said. Adrian did nothing. Didn't flinch. Didn't bargain. Didn't ask me to reconsider. He simply nodded. Okay. The room stayed quiet. Something inside me gave way like a lock finally opening. I had said no, and Adrian was still there. Not angry. Not withdrawing. Not making me earn warmth back. Just there. That was unfair, I whispered. Probably. You knew what I was testing. Yes. And he gave the smallest shrug. You said no. So the answer is no. My eyes burned. I looked away. God, I hate how simple you make that sound. It should have been simple before. We didn't need another apology. I already knew he was sorry. He already knew sorry wasn't enough. What mattered was what happened after the word no. I breathed out slowly. I don't want to work for you. You won't. I don't want you managing my future because you think you owe me. I won't. And I don't know what I'm doing next. That's yours to figure out. I looked at him. You really hate saying that, don't you? For the first time that night, Adrian smiled. More than you know. I laughed, and the tension in my chest loosened. I want to see what this is without the job. His smile disappeared because suddenly the moment mattered too much for anything casual. Evan, I'm not coming back. I know. I'm not promising forever. I know. I'm saying I want to try. As me. Not as your assistant. Not because you need me. Adrian's eyes held mine. As you. Yes. Then I would like that. He still didn't reach for me. That mattered. So I crossed the space between us. I placed my hand on the table, palm up. Adrian looked at it, then at me. Only when I nodded did he take it. His fingers closed carefully around mine. No victory. No possession. Just contact I had chosen. Are you sure? He asked. A week earlier I would have heard doubt. Now I understood what it was, permission to change my mind. I squeezed his hand. I'm sure about trying. He nodded. Then we try. For the first time in years, saying yes did not feel like making myself useful. It felt like choosing. For a while after Adrian said, then we try, neither of us moved. My hand was still in his, resting between two half-finished cups of coffee, and the strangest thing about the moment was how little it demanded from me. I did not need to promise anything else. I did not need to define what trying meant. I did not need to become useful again before the silence felt safe. Adrian stayed until a little after 9. At the door he paused. Can I call you tomorrow? I smiled despite myself. You're really going to ask every time, aren't you? Until you tell me, I don't have to. Call me tomorrow. Okay. The next morning he called at 10. Not 8:03. Not because he needed a schedule fixed. Just 10. Good morning, he said. Good morning. I don't actually have an agenda for this conversation. I laughed. That must be terrifying. Deeply. We talked for 20 minutes about almost nothing, and that was the point. Over the next few weeks, we became something neither of us had practiced being. Two people learning each other without a job description between us. I found work eventually, but not with Adrian and not in any role built around another person's life. I chose a strategy position where my hours were mine, where credit had to be assigned in the room instead of silently hoped for later, and where being competent did not mean being permanently available. When I told Adrian about the offer, he asked one question. Do you want it? Not how much does it pay. Not who do you report to. Not whether it makes sense. I think I do. Then I'm happy for you. I waited for the second sentence. It never came. That was how I knew the change was real. Not because Adrian became perfect. He didn't. Sometimes uncertainty still made him reach for control. Sometimes I still caught myself offering solutions before he asked. The difference was that those moments no longer passed invisibly between us. We noticed them. We named them. We changed course. About a month after I left Cross, I met Adrian at his apartment for dinner. He was running late, which I found more amusing than irritating now that I was no longer responsible for preventing it. While I waited, I noticed a slim black folder on the edge of his desk. My old private file. The one he had opened the day I resigned. My chest tightened before I could stop it. Adrian came into the room, carrying 2 glasses of water, and followed my gaze. I should have given that back sooner. He set the glasses down. I haven't opened it since your last day. You kept it. I wasn't sure deleting it was another decision I had no right to make for you. He crossed to the desk, picked up the folder, and held it out. It's yours. You decide what happens to it. I took it from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I remembered the Calder entry, the late nights, the line about hoping he would notice that I always said yes. That file had once felt like proof Adrian had finally found me. Holding it now, I understood something different. He had found information. That was not the same as finding me. Finding me had happened later, when he stopped treating access like something his position gave him automatically. Do you want to know what else is in here? I asked. Adrian's eyes moved to the folder, then back to me. Only if you want me to. The answer came without hesitation. I opened the folder just enough to see the first page, then closed it again. Not tonight. Adrian nodded. Okay. No disappointment. No question. No attempt to change my mind. I set the file beside me. Maybe someday. Maybe someday. Dinner burned slightly because Adrian forgot the timer, and for once I did not rescue it. We ate it anyway. Later, sitting together on his couch, he reached toward my hand and stopped just before touching it. I looked at him, then turned my palm upward. He took it. Such a small thing. No one else would have noticed. But that was the point. I had spent years believing love would arrive when someone finally noticed how much I could carry for them. I was wrong. Adrian's attention did not create my worth, and his regret did not erase the years I had spent disappearing. What changed everything was simpler and harder. I learned to stop offering myself as proof that I deserved to stay. He learned that seeing me did not mean owning access to me. The first time Adrian opened my file, he learned things I had never meant to tell him. The last time it sat between us, closed and untouched, he waited for me to decide what he was allowed to know. And when I finally reached for his hand, it was not because he needed me. It was because I wanted to.